echoes of the Wailing Widow. Catherine had always been plagued by nightmares of a weeping ghost, no matter where she went or what she did. The haunting wails and sorrowful cries would follow her, as if tethered to her very soul. She had tried therapy, medication, and even spiritual cleansings, but nothing could rid her of the nightly torment. In a last-ditch effort to confront her fears, Catherine decided to return to her childhood home in the small town of Mirkwood, hoping that by facing the source of her nightmares, she could finally put an end to the terror. The moment she set foot in the town, a feeling of unease began to creep over her, as if something dark and sinister was lurking just beneath the surface. Whispers of a horrifying apparition, known as La Llorona or the Wailing Widow, circulated among the townspeople. They spoke of a woman in white, her face twisted in a mask of grief, who stalked the shadows and snatched away unsuspecting victims. As the body count began to rise, the townspeople lived in fear of the wailing spectre that had cast its malevolent shadow over their once peaceful community. Catherine knew in her heart that there was more to the legend than just a simple ghost story. The nightmares that had haunted her for as long as she could remember were somehow connected to the malevolent spirit that terrorized the town. She felt compelled to uncover the truth about La Llorona and her own past, convinced that they were inextricably linked. As she delved deeper into her family's history, she discovered a dark secret that had been buried for generations. Her great-grandmother had been accused of witchcraft and was rumored to have made a pact with a demonic entity to gain unimaginable power. In exchange for her soul, the demon had granted her a twisted form of immortality, cursing her to wander the earth as La Llorona, the Wailing Widow. Realizing that the spirit of her great-grandmother had been haunting her nightmares all these years, Catherine was determined to break the curse and end the reign of terror that had gripped Mirkwood. Armed with an ancient spellbook she had found hidden away in her family's attic, she devised a plan to confront the malevolent spectre and bring peace to both the town and her tormented ancestor. On the night of the full moon, when the veil between the living and the dead was at its thinnest, Catherine ventured to the edge of Mirkwood Forest, the place where her great-grandmother had first made her terrible pact. As the wind howled through the trees and the shadows danced at her feet, she began to recite the incantations that she hoped would banish La Llorona forever. With each word spoken, the atmosphere grew heavier, and the air became thick with dread. A wailing cry pierced the night, echoing through the woods as the ghostly figure of La Llorona emerged from the darkness. Her face was a portrait of anguish, her eyes filled with an eternity of sorrow. Catherine looked into the tormented eyes of her ancestor and spoke the final words of the spell. As the incantation took hold, the spirit of La Llorona began to fade, her cries growing soft and more distant until she vanished completely, leaving behind an eerie silence that hung in the air like a shroud. The town of Mirkwood breathed a collective sigh of relief as the horrifying apparition of the Wailing Widow was laid to rest, and the dark history that had bound her to the earth was finally revealed. Catherine, now free from the nightmares that had haunted her for a lifetime, could finally begin to heal and rebuild her life in the wake of her harrowing ordeal. The townspeople, once skeptical of Catherine's connection to the legend, now regarded her with a mixture of gratitude. She had not only faced the darkness within her own family, but had also saved the town from the curse that had cast its shadow over their lives for generations. Catherine took it upon herself to share her story, to ensure that the tragic tale of La Llorona and the dark history of her family would never be forgotten. She dedicated her life to researching and documenting the town's haunted past, and eventually became an expert in the field of supernatural folklore. As the years passed, Catherine found solace in helping others confront their own fears and uncover the hidden truths that lurked in the shadows of their lives. She became a beacon of hope for those who were haunted by their own nightmares, guiding them through their darkest hours and into the light of understanding. The once quiet town of Mirkwood underwent a transformation as well. No longer haunted by the ghostly presence of the Wailing Widow, the town began to thrive once more. The people of Mirkwood embraced their newfound peace and vowed never to forget the sacrifices that had been made to secure it. And though the chilling cries of La Llorona no longer echoed through the night, the memory of the Wailing Widow and her tragic tale lived on in the hearts and minds of the people of Mirkwood. They served as a somber reminder of the darkness that could take root in the human soul and the power of one person's courage to confront it and bring it to light. In the end, Catherine's journey taught her that the key to overcoming her nightmares and breaking the chains of the past was not to run from her fears, but to face them head-on. By embracing her own connection to the legend of the Wailing Widow and unraveling the tangled web of her family's history, she had not only set her ancestors' soul free, but had also found the strength to break free from the echoes of her own haunted past. Tears of the Damned. Jonathan, a talented yet struggling writer, was desperate for a change of scenery. He had recently rented a secluded lakeside cabin in the small town of Willows Inn to focus on his novel. The cabin, nestled deep in the woods, offered the perfect setting for him to escape the distractions of everyday life. Upon his arrival, Jonathan immediately felt the eerie atmosphere that surrounded the town. Whispered stories of a weeping ghost known as La Llorona circulated among the locals. At first, he dismissed the tales as mere superstitions, but as the days went by, he found himself inexplicably drawn to the legend. His fascination with La Llorona grew, and he began to delve deeper into her tragic tale. The more he learned about the weeping woman, the more he felt her presence haunting his every move. Strange occurrences plagued his daily life, from phantom footsteps echoing through the cabin to chilling wails that resonated across the lake. Jonathan became obsessed with unraveling the mystery of La Llorona's tormented existence. He scoured the town's archives, interviewed the oldest residents, and spent countless hours researching the local history. As he pieced together her dark story, he started to believe that the spirit of La Llorona was reaching out to him for help. Night after night, he was visited by horrifying nightmares of the weeping woman. Her grief-stricken visage haunted his dreams, her anguished cries filling his every waking moment. Jonathan realized that if he wanted to regain control over his life and sanity, he needed to. In the town's dusty archives, Jonathan stumbled upon a series of old newspaper clippings that revealed a chilling account of a woman named Maria, who, after the tragic loss of her children, had drowned herself in the lake. Locals believed her restless spirit, cursed to wander the earth in search of her lost children, was none other than La Llorona. Armed with this new information, Jonathan set out to break the curse that bound La Llorona's spirit to the world of the living. With a heavy heart, he ventured deep into the woods to the very spot where Maria's life had come to a tragic end. As twilight fell, he performed an ancient ritual he had discovered in his research, hoping to release La Llorona's tormented soul. The wind began to howl, and the surface of the lake churned violently as if it were alive. Amidst the chaos, he saw the ethereal figure of the weeping woman emerge from the depths, her face etched with unbearable grief. Jonathan looked into her tear-filled eyes and spoke the words that he hoped would free her from her eternal torment. As the last syllable left his lips, a sudden calm descended upon the lake, and the ghostly figure of La Llorona slowly dissipated into the night. In the weeks that followed, the strange occurrences ceased, and a sense of peace returned to the cabin by the lake. Jonathan's novel, inspired by the legend of La Llorona, became a bestseller and catapulted him to literary fame. Though the haunting presence of the weeping woman was gone, her memory lingered on in the pages of Jonathan's book, a chilling testament to the power of one man's determination to solve the riddle of a tormented existence and bring solace to a soul lost in the abyss of eternal sorrow. The Tears of the Damned. The Crying Bridge. Lost Hollow was a town that lived in the shadow of its own dark past. At its heart stood an abandoned bridge, long since condemned and overtaken by nature. The townspeople avoided the bridge at all costs, claiming it was haunted by the mournful cries of La Llorona, the weeping woman who had drowned her own children and was cursed to wander the earth in search of their lost souls. A group of thrill-seeking teenagers, eager to prove their bravery and defy the warnings of the townspeople, dared each other to spend the night on the Crying Bridge. Armed with flashlights and a sense of reckless abandon, they ventured out on a moonless night, ready to face whatever horrors the bridge had in store for them. As the group settled in for the night, they began to hear the faint sounds of sobbing carried on the wind. They dismissed it as their imagination, spurred on by the spooky atmosphere and the legends they had heard. However, as the night waned, the crying grew louder and more persistent, echoing through the dark and empty spaces beneath the bridge. The teens, once so sure of their bravado, began to feel the icy tendrils of fear tightening around their hearts. They tried to laugh off their unease, but the mournful wails that filled the air only served to heighten their terror. It soon became apparent that the legend of La Llorona was all too real, and they had unwittingly invited her wrath by trespassing on her haunted domain. As the terrifying spirit of the weeping woman stalked them one by one, the teenagers realized that they would have to confront their own personal demons in order to survive the night. Each of them had a secret, a dark memory or hidden shame that they had tried to bury deep within themselves. It was these very secrets that La Llorona was using against them, twisting their fears and insecurities into nightmarish visions designed to break their spirits. As the night waned, the group of friends began to unravel, their fear and desperation driving them to reveal the truth about themselves and the town's dark past. They discovered that the legend of La Llorona was rooted in a terrible tragedy that had befallen the town decades earlier, a tragedy that had been covered up by their own families in an attempt to protect their reputations and the illusion of the town's peaceful existence. With the horrifying truth laid bare, the friends realized that their only hope of survival was to face La Llorona together and confront the darkness that had been festering within the town for generations. As the first light of dawn began to break through the darkness, they gathered their remaining courage and challenged the weeping spirit. The air crackled with tension and raw emotion as the teenagers stood their ground, unflinching in the face of La Llorona's wrath. As they confronted her with the truth of the town's past, the spirit of the weeping woman began to weaken, her cries growing softer and more distant. Finally, as the sun crested the horizon, La Llorona let out a final, mournful wail before dissipating into the early morning mist. The curse of the crying bridge had been broken, and the friends, forever changed by their harrowing experience, had survived the night. In the aftermath of their ordeal, the group vowed to bring the truth of Lost Hollow's dark past to light, refusing to let the town's secrets remain buried any longer. As they moved forward, they were bound together not only by their shared trauma but also by their determination to confront the darkness within themselves and the world around them. And while the crying bridge was now silent, the legend of La Llorona and the haunting memory of that fateful night would live on in the hearts and minds of the people of Lost Hollow. The teenagers' bravery in the face of unimaginable terror had sent ripples of change throughout the community, forcing them to acknowledge and confront the darkness that had long festered beneath the surface. As word of the teens' harrowing encounter with La Llorona spread, the town became a somber place, forced to reconcile with its own demons. Slowly, the people of Lost Hollow began to open up about their own secrets, their own personal tragedies and heartbreaks. The town's newfound openness allowed for healing and growth, as the townspeople learned to face their own pasts and move forward together. The group of friends, forever bonded by their brush with the supernatural, went on to become beacons of hope and change within their community. Each of them dedicated themselves to various causes, from fighting for social justice to preserving local history and folklore. The crying bridge became a symbol of their journey, a reminder of the strength that could be found when individuals faced their fears and united against a common enemy. As the years passed, the legend of La Llorona and the crying bridge became a fixture of Lost Hollow's folklore. Parents would share the tale with their children as a cautionary reminder of the importance of facing one's fears and the dangers of keeping secrets hidden. The bridge itself, once a place of dread and despair, had been transformed into a symbol of resilience and hope for the future. In time, the memory of that fateful night began to fade, but the lessons learned by the people of Lost Hollow would endure. The legend of La Llorona and the crying bridge served as a constant reminder of the darkness that could take root within a community and the power of unity and courage in the face of such evil. The town of Lost Hollow, once defined by its dark secrets, had been forever changed by the bravery of a group of friends who dared to face the terrifying spirit of the Weeping Woman. Their story would live on, a testament to the power of facing one's fears and the strength that can be found when people stand together against the darkness. The Weeping Revenant. In the sleepy small town of Dry Creek, nestled in the heart of a forgotten valley, the autumn wind whispered sinister secrets through the rustling leaves. It was the time of year when shadows grew longer and the divide between the living and the dead began to blur. 5 friends, bound together by their insatiable curiosity for the supernatural, gathered in the attic of an old abandoned house. The air was heavy with the sense of dust and decay, and the only light came from a circle of flickering candles, casting their wavering shadows on the walls. Among the friends were Sam, the natural-born leader; Emma, the skeptic; Tyler, the brave one; Sarah, the sensitive soul; and Lucas, the one who always had something to prove. They had been inseparable since childhood, and their fascination with the unknown had led them on countless adventures, but nothing could have prepared them for what awaited them that night. The seance began with a series of ritual chants, led by Sam, who held an ancient grimoire filled with spells and incantations. As the friends joined hands and closed their eyes, they felt an icy chill creep into the room. The atmosphere became charged with a strange energy, and the candles began to flicker wildly. In that moment, the air grew thick with an overwhelming sense of grief and despair. The friends opened their eyes to see a woman standing before them, her face streaked with tears and her eyes filled with a bottomless sorrow. It was La Llorona, the Weeping Revenant. Emma, the skeptic, was the first to break the silence. "This can't be real," she whispered, her voice trembling, but even she could not deny the palpable, anguish that radiated from the ghostly apparition. La Llorona began to wail, a sound that echoed through the attic and sent shivers down their spines. She cursed them for disturbing her eternal slumber and vowed to make them suffer for their transgression. In the days that followed, the friends found themselves haunted by the vengeful spirit. Each night, they would hear her mournful cries outside their windows and see her weeping visage in their nightmares. One by one, they began to unravel, plagued, desperate to break the curse. The friends delved deeper into the legend of La Llorona. They uncovered the dark tale of a woman who had drowned her own children in a fit of madness and was doomed to wander the earth in search of their lost souls. The friends realized that the only way to free themselves from the curse was to confront their deepest fears and face La Llorona in a final showdown. Armed with their newfound knowledge, they returned to the attic, where it had all begun. The room was once again bathed in the eerie glow of candlelight as they summoned the Weeping Revenant. La Llorona appeared before them, her tear-streaked face twisted in rage, with their hearts pounding in their chests. Each of the friends confronted the ghostly figure and shared their deepest fears and regrets. As they spoke, the vengeful spirit seemed to grow weaker, her cries becoming softer. Finally, it was Lucas, the one who always had something to prove, who faced the spirit and admitted his fear of being alone. As he spoke, a sudden sense of peace washed over the room. La Llorona's wails ceased, and her tear-streaked face began to fade away. With a final shuddering sigh, the Weeping Revenant vanished, leaving behind an air of tranquility and a lingering sense of sorrow. The friends had conquered their fears and broken the curse that had bound the spirit of La Llorona to the world of the living. In doing so, they had not only saved their own lives but also helped to bring some measure of peace to the tormented soul of the Weeping Revenant. As they left the attic that night, they couldn't help but feel a sense of awe at the power of their shared vulnerability. They had delved into the darkest corners of their hearts, and together, they had triumphed over an ancient evil. Word of their encounter with La Llorona spread throughout the town of Dry Creek, and soon, the friends became local legends in their own right. People would come from far and wide to hear their incredible tale and to learn from their wisdom and courage. As the years passed, the once inseparable friends drifted apart, each following their own path in life, yet, despite the distance that grew between them, they remained forever bound by the memories of that fateful night and the knowledge that they had faced the unthinkable together. The old abandoned house in Dry Creek was eventually torn down, and the legend of La Llorona began to fade from memory. But for those who had borne witness to the Weeping Revenant's haunting cries, the echoes of her sorrowful lament would never be forgotten. And as the winds of autumn returned each year to whisper their secrets through the rustling leaves, the friends would remember the night they had stared into the abyss and emerged victorious, forever changed by their encounter with the ghostly figure of La Llorona, the Weeping Revenant. Whispers of the Drowned. Amelia, an ambitious investigative journalist, had a knack for uncovering the truth. When she caught wind of a series of mysterious drownings in the coastal town of Salton Cove, her curiosity was piqued. She was determined to get to the bottom of the story, no matter how dark the depths of her investigation may become. Upon her arrival, she quickly sensed the unease that gripped the town. The locals were hesitant to speak about the drownings, and when they did, it was in hushed tones, as if the very mention of the events could bring about more tragedy. Amelia's journalistic instincts told her that there was something sinister lurking beneath the surface of the town's quaint facade. She delved deeper into the town's shadowy past. She uncovered whispers of an ancient legend, that of La Llorona, the weeping woman who was said to haunt the shores of Salton Cove. The townspeople believed that the spirit of La Llorona was responsible for the mysterious drownings, as she sought to claim more souls to join her in her watery grave. With each new piece of the puzzle she uncovered, Amelia found herself drawn further into the chilling embrace of the legend. The more she learned about La Llorona, the more she began to feel her presence, as if the weeping spirit was reaching out to her from the depths of the ocean. The drownings continued, each one more grisly than the last, and it soon became apparent that the weeping spirit was growing more powerful with each passing day. Amelia knew she had to act fast if she was to save the town from the wrath of La Llorona and uncover the horrifying truth behind the drownings. As her investigation progressed, Amelia discovered a long-forgotten journal that detailed a ritual to banish the spirit of La Llorona and free the souls of the drowned. Knowing that she had nothing to lose and everything to gain, Amelia made the fateful decision to perform the ritual on the stormy shores of Salton Cove. As the wind howled and the waves crashed around her, Amelia stood her ground and began to recite the ancient incantations. The air grew heavy with dread, and the ocean seemed to come alive with an otherworldly energy as the spirit of La Llorona emerged from the roiling waters. The ghostly figure of the weeping woman was a sight to behold. Her tear-streaked face twisted in agony, her spectral gown billowing around her like a living shroud. Amelia stared into the tortured eyes of La Llorona and continued the ritual, even as the whispers of the drowned echoed around her, threatening to pull her into the depths. With a final desperate cry, Amelia completed the ritual, and the spirit of La Llorona let out a wail that shook the very earth beneath her feet. The ghostly figure began to dissolve, her form dissipating into a mist that was quickly swallowed by the raging sea. As the storm cleared and the skies above Salton Cove brightened, the whispers of the drowned fell silent, and a sense of peace settled over the town. Amelia had banished the spirit of La Llorona and freed the souls of the drowned, but the scars of her harrowing experience would remain with her for the rest of her life. In the aftermath of her ordeal, Amelia penned a chilling account of her investigation and the dark secrets of Salton Cove. The story gained her acclaim as a fearless journalist who was willing to confront the supernatural in pursuit of the truth, though she would go on to tackle many more stories in her career. The haunting memories of La Llorona and the whispers of the drowned would never be far from her mind, a constant reminder of the darkness that lurked beneath the surface of even the most picturesque towns. Amelia's story of La Llorona and the drownings at Salton Cove became a cautionary tale, a stark warning about the importance of confronting and acknowledging the darkness that exists within the world and within ourselves. It was a lesson that Amelia would carry with her, informing her work and driving her to seek out the truth, no matter how frightening or unsettling it may be. As Amelia continued her career as an investigative journalist, she became known for her fearless pursuit of the truth and her willingness to face even the most sinister of forces. Her experiences in Salton Cove had left an indelible mark on her soul, shaping her into a force to be reckoned with in the world of journalism. In the years that followed, the town of Salton Cove slowly began to recover from the shadow that had been cast over it by the dark legend of La Llorona. The people of the town would never forget the terrifying events that had unfolded or the brave journalist who had saved them from the wrath of the weeping spirit. And though the whispers of the drowned had been silenced, the legend of La Llorona would live on in the collective memory of the town, a haunting reminder of the darkness that had once consumed them and the woman who had fought to bring their suffering to an end.